Welcome to season 3 of On the Spot.
In June 2018, the Anti-Corruption Commissioner was appointed by His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, giving him a 5-year mandate to fight corruption. Well, in that time, a lot has been achieved, with Sierra Leone moving up the Global Corruption Index and performing quite well in the MCC scorecard. Well, 5 years came and went by quite fast as Sierra Leone re-elected His Excellency Bio in the 2023 elections. Well, with the president's re-election, it pleased him so well to reappoint the commissioner, giving him 5 more years to continue with the fight against corruption. Well, my guest is a seasoned lawyer who's popularly known as the People's Commissioner. He is Francis Ben Kaifala. This is On the Spot. My name is Stella Bangura. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. It's always amazing having you on the show, Commissioner.
Always a pleasure being here.
First of all, let me start with a congratulations. Congrats on your reappointment.
Thank you.
Did you see that coming, or were you expecting it?
Well, with the kind of work we did in the first time, I was expecting that it would be renewed. I didn't expect it to be very early in the new presidency, but It turned out to be the first appointment. So thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, so it means that you probably did quite well, and it so pleased the president to retain you to continue the work that you've been doing. I mean, you've had 5 years and it's come so fast and it's gone so fast. What's been the highlight of 5 years of your tenure as commissioner?
Well, the primary mandate I was given, like the mission, was to launder the image of Sierra Leone from being one of the most corrupt countries in the world into a country which, like a phoenix, is rising from its ashes. A renewal. And that we have done so well in the past 5 years, that Sierra Leone, even though, yes, we are not saying that we have clearly removed corruption, but when it comes to the effort we are putting in, we are one of the best examples in Africa. And that is the highlight. That is really that recognition. The index is going in the right direction. People coming to study what we are doing in Sierra Leone from as far as South Africa, from Uganda, from Gambia, from Liberia, from Guinea, basically studying what we are doing so they can go and implement it. These are things that you do not normally do within 5 years, but in 5 years we have done it all. And it gives us a lot of impetus for the future, and that's what we are now on.
So what has been the challenge, maybe the critical ones, that you encountered in your 5 years?
2 major challenges: resources. It's always a challenge. I used to believe that leadership is all about what a leader can do. But I have now realized that resources is a key component of leadership. Like when they say the monkey wants to box, but the hands are short. And sometimes you can try your best as a leader, but if the resources are not there, they simply are not there. And even though the government is doing very well to support our efforts, but definitely fighting corruption is not cheap. And there will need more. We don't have particular capital expenditure. Vehicles, other things, computers, technology to do our work are expensive, and we don't have those. So resources has been a major challenge. The other challenge is cynicism, societal cynicism, where society has gone into reclusion and does not believe that anything good can come out of politics, can come out of people who occupy offices like mine. So irrespective of your best effort, they are in that reclusion and believing that life has a malignant outcome, and because of that outcome, they don't think that this is going to lead to anything. So even when you're doing well and the results are there, that cynicism is fighting you, and sometimes you're not getting the right support.
How about the manpower?
Manpower is not a major problem. We have always been able to recruit when we can. And generally, the government has supported us in doing so.
So
manpower at the beginning was a challenge.
Yeah.
Down the line, it wasn't a challenge anymore.
No, I asked that because obviously fighting corruption is just not within Freetown. It's nationwide.
Yes.
And you need a lot of presence in all the districts and all the region, and if possible, villages as well. How predominantly present are you in all the areas?
Well, we have regional offices in all major headquarter towns: Bo, Makini, Kenema, Port Loko, Kono. We have regional offices there. And we also have deployed what we call community monitors in almost all districts. And in these offices, we basically have a microcosm of the Anti-Corruption Commission in Freetown, where we have the regional manager, we have administrative staff, we have prevention officers, investigation officers, public education officers, all supporting their work, along with a lot of auxiliary staff. So, to be honest, manpower is not our major problem. Our major problem is the resource to power them.
To power them.
To get them going.
Right.
And sometimes there are certain regional offices where their vehicles can break down. And they don't have vehicles for months because we don't have, some vehicles we have are 20 years old, 16 years old, 18 years old. And we are dealing with very rough terrain, particularly in the north and sometimes in the southeast. So it's a challenge. The challenge is predominantly resources.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold you there on the resources. This is On the Spot. More still to come. Don't go anywhere.
Anti-Corruption Commission, ACC, is the leading institution in Sierra Leone's effort to combat and control corruption. Our dedicated team is committed to preventing corruption through public education, rigorous investigation, and prosecution, which has seen Sierra Leone make remarkable progress in the anti-corruption ranking. We climbed 22 places in the Transparency International ranking and score over 70% for 6 consecutive years in the Millennium Challenge Corporation Scorecard. ACC operates toll-free hotlines for reporting corruption and ensures protection for informers and witnesses. We also establish solid whistleblower protection and reward scheme to recover ill-gotten gains. Together, let's fight corruption and uphold integrity for a better future.
Welcome back to the show. I have with me Francis Ben Kaifala, the Commissioner, the People's Commissioner for the Anti-Corruption Commission. So we're talking about resources. So let me now ask, what is the perception of the people when it comes to the work of the ACC, looking at the 5 years of your time in office?
I think perception is divided. You have a section that I said are still into that reclusion that I started speaking about. But the majority of the people believe that we are doing very well because they understand that fighting corruption is not an easy task, but we are giving it our best effort. Our public education drive is massive. Our prevention measures are absolutely great. We are doing our best with enforcement, and sometimes it's difficult because in the day of social media, it's easy for somebody to say massive corruption here, massive corruption there, but then the evidence is not there to support it. But as far as they are concerned, you did not arrest that person. Therefore, you're not fighting corruption. But I have to arrest based on the evidence available to me. So sometimes we can have that conflict with the public, but more generally, they believe that in good faith, we are doing our best. And the majority, the last time the PFM Consortium did a survey, there was a 92% confidence.
I asked that because perception affects the contribution and the support that you would get from the public.
Correct.
How is that? Because for your work to be successful, you need the cooperation of the people. You need them to be able to come forward. You need them to be able to report acts of corruption. They need to also be able to come forward and give statement. And I know from previous conversation that's been a challenge for the commission.
Yes, our culture, our society does not encourage speaking against somebody's wealth. It doesn't come across well, and many people are not willing. They only do so when they are unhappy or jealous, or sometimes when they are forced to do so.
You're right.
But even that, at the beginning, they might cooperate, but as investigations sometimes take long time, by the time you're ready to charge to court, they are not ready to speak again.
Right.
Because like I said, that's just how our society is. People don't feel very convenient. Because like they say in our local parlance, I don't want to put bread in a person's mouth.
Yeah.
I don't want to take bread out of his mouth.
They don't want to be the bad guy.
Yes, so I don't want to be the person who is responsible for somebody else's downfall.
Yeah.
And so they can sometimes whisper to you, but when you now say come forward, you never have it.
Yeah.
Or even when they are angry, sometimes when there's acrimony, they come forward. But then investigations take a while, it takes a long time. They may be prevailed upon by their pastor, their cousins or uncles,
Right.
or circumstances just change and they are no longer
No,
willing to
willing
support.
to
And
come
that is a
forward.
major challenge with actually, particularly when it comes to enforcement in dealing with corruption.
Is it possible that people don't really understand what corruption is? And I ask that because we have so normalized so many forms of corruption that we no longer realize that it is act of corruption. I think a lot of people place a lot of emphasis on corruption within the public sector, but even petty things as bribery, paying bribe to a public official to carry out their own work, it is act of corruption. So do people really understand corruption?
I believe majority of the people understand corruption. At least they understand that that particular issue is a moral wrong. Okay, even if they don't understand it from the technical sense.
Right.
And that is why we have to be just consistent with our enforcement regime. We have to be more aggressive with our public education drive. And more generally, we have to prevent, because their tendency is to be corrupt will always be there. But if you remove the means, the monopoly, the systems, and the opportunities to engage in it, then you would have decapitated them from carrying out the act. And that is what institutions like ours is for.
Yeah.
Is to forestall the human tendency to be greedy, to want it all, and sometimes to feign ignorance just to be able to take opportunity.
I'm going to ask you on how you're working with the private sector, because your office, your mandate is within the public sector, but there is as much corruption within the private sector and within the everyday Joe. So I'm going to ask you a question around that, but we'll take a quick break. This is On the Spot. We'll be right back.
Who knows what might happen tomorrow, next week, or even next year? But we do know that with Stacco Insurance, whatever the future brings, we'll be there when you need us most, with outstanding customer service and prompt payment of your claim. Fire, motor, general accident, marine, life and medical. For now and for tomorrow. Stacco Insurance, a passion for high standards.
Welcome back. This is On the Spot. For those of you just tuning in, I have the Commissioner for the Anti-Corruption Commission. So with regards corruption within the private sector, how do you work around that? Because at the end of the day, people who are eventually recruited in the public sector, they all come from the private sector. They all come from from our friends, our families. What's the work of the ACC with regards, private sector corruption and acts of corruption?
Yes, primarily the anti-corruption legislation focuses on public sector.
Yeah.
But there are many offenses which interface with the private sector. And therefore, we understand that if we are to succeed in our work, we have to incorporate them. So recently, we've had a deliberate strategy whereby our prevention department is working with various private sector institutions like banks, who usually facilitate crimes anyway, so that they can set up systems to either forestall corruption, but also to understand how to work or collaborate with us to ensure that we can investigate swiftly and to ensure that information sharing is more efficient. So the private sector is very much within our radar, not just in terms of they themselves could be held accountable, particularly where it interfaces with the public sector, but also for us to help us in the fight against corruption. And we are trying to also work with the Corporate Affairs Commission for certain systems to be put in place in terms of beneficial ownership of shares, for example, which can help us with our investigation. Generally, they cooperate with us, but we need to have a proper system.
Okay. So what's your 5 years going to look like? What's the target? What's the strategy? What's the focus for this next 5 years now that you're on?
I believe that we have done a lot of public education. Also, we have been doing a lot of prevention work. We will continue to encourage the government to invest in prevention, because prevention is always better than cure. But our work is now going to be principally intelligence-based enforcement. So whereby we rely a lot more on intelligence to get information and we enforce. We hold people accountable basically within the system. The typical kill dog before dog, let dog know say die day. So it's a system that is going to be very fierce with the corrupt, because at this stage, it's difficult for anybody to say they do not any longer understand what it is, or they give all the excuses.
Yeah.
The enabling environment has been provided for them and an opportunity given to them. We have done a lot of system and processes reviews in major MDAs. So anybody really who decides to be corrupt has himself to blame. And I think as an institution, we are going to be a little bit more ruthless when it comes to enforcement.
Let me ask this question because it's very important. The work with the audit service, Sierra Leone, that's a critical department, rather agency that, sort of audits all these ministries and MDAs. What's your work with that, and how do you sort of work on the reports that they do get to release every year, the audit report?
So we consider the audit report as a major source of information on corruption. By reason of the fact that it primarily is an indicator of how prevalent corruption is within the public system, or how much red flags are there within the system. We take it very seriously. And if you recall, a few days ago, I had a press conference where I outlined what ACC was going to do with regards to the various issues raised in the Auditor General's report. And we're going to take that very seriously. We are basically going to treat it like any other whistleblowing, and then identify each issue and deal with it separately.
Have there been improvements in the audit reports over the last 5 years?
So, for example, the audit report last year is far worse than the audit report this year.
Right.
And that's because of how aggressive we were with issues in the last Auditor General's report. Audit issues Supreme Audit reports will always raise issues about public accounts. And sometimes they are not necessarily corruption. It could be administrative, it could be HR issue, it could be documentation issues. But we were very aggressive with the last audit report, and I think it has reflected. Also, the Ministry of Finance has been supporting very much our prevention plans with them, asking them to be a little bit more robust with those they release money to. And those things have started taking effect. That is why this year, before when the General's report comes, there's a lot of brouhaha, there's a lot of reports on social media, billions stolen. But this year, that conversation is not happening in that kind of manner that usually can be sometimes inflammatory.
Yeah.
So it tells you how moderate the issues in this report are. Most of them are just historical, and we are going to work with the system to clear them.
So what should people expect? What are the, what would be the, for lack of a better word, should I say the milestone that you hope to achieve come the end of your 5 years to say that, yes, it has been another successful 5 years?
Taking Sierra Leone to plus or minus 80 in the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index country rankings.
Right.
So we were at 130 when I was appointed commissioner. We have moved 20 places up to 110. I am now expecting that we can move to plus or minus 80 if the government can actually invest in prevention and we continue on the trajectory we are. But also in the MCC Control of Corruption scorecard, remember we were at 49% when I was appointed.
Yeah.
And consistently for 6 years in a row, we have passed over 70%. We have hit 83%. I'm hoping that we can hit at least 90% before I leave.
Before you leave. All right. We'll take another break and we'll be right back.
The National Minerals Agency was set up in 2012 by an Act of Parliament, and in 2013 we started operations. We have the Ministry of Mines and Mineral Resources, that by constitution the minister is responsible for the natural resources of this country, but that's the policy formulation wing of the mines and mineral sector. Then we have the NMA, was established to be the technical professional regulatory wing. So if you take it into context, we are actually the custodians of the minerals of this country. Diamond, bauxite, rutile, iron ore, chromite, you name it, including the newly discovered minerals as well, which we're still evaluating whether they're in economic quantities. So our job here preliminarily is to ensure that we maximize the benefits all Sierra Leoneans derive from these mineral resources that God has given us.
Welcome back to On the Spot. So, before you leave, you do not work alone, you work with a team. How has that been for you?
It's been great. I mean, teamwork is always good. My team, the ACC has had consistency. Staff retention has been great. And many staff understand that we have a peculiar role in society and they are giving it their very best, despite the challenges that we may have with resources. So the team has been great, and I can only say thank you to them for standing behind the vision and moving it forward, even sometimes when I'm away on meetings, conferences, and on studies.
Yeah, speaking of being away, congratulations on another amazing journey in your life. You're undertaking your master's at Harvard. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm doing a master's degree. Harvard allows you to tailor your master's degree to what you want. So it gives you 500 choices of courses with option to take classes at MIT, the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, the Fletcher School of Diplomacy, and all these other. Basically, it gives you a pool, and you can tailor the master's degree that you want and select the courses that you want to pursue. So I am basically combining gaps in my educational journey because I already have master's degree in international financial law and economics. I have another master's degree in comparative constitutional law and human rights. So the gap that is there is actually international law. So one pillar of the master's that I'm doing at Harvard is international law. But I'm also doing a lot of governance and leadership programs, which basically is to prepare me for any continuation in my role on the next level position.
And how do you think that's going to impact your current role?
I think it's great. For example, taking the Global Anti-Corruption Lab. The Global Anti-Corruption Lab is like a factory for producing experts in anti-corruption in the world. And I'm taking courses there. And I mean, that is going to prepare me basically to move away from being a local champion to an international champion. So it's a great opportunity and I'm making the very best of it.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that. And congrats as well. You and your team have been able to move to the new building. How does that impact the work of the ACC?
Oh, it's an absolutely beautiful environment. It commands a commanding presence on the hill overlooking Freetown. And you have a 3-dimension view of Freetown. And we built it in such a way to make very good use of that environment because it's almost partly built with glass and you can have the view. But also the space is amazing. It has over 50 offices. The paraphernalia are all new. It's an amazing place to work.
And
already I can see how that has changed and impacted our work. I mean, the staff are in a very happy mood because the environments you work in actually reflects your mood and how your productivity is. And the new anti-corruption building, which we call the Integrity House, is absolutely a joy to behold.
Right. So before I let you go, what would be your 2 cents to Sierra Leoneans? What do you want to say to them?
I just want Sierra Leoneans to understand that when we fight corruption, it's for the benefit of us and our children. To change Sierra Leone from the laughter of the world to the most admired in the world. And we can only do that when we all unite behind the fight against corruption, stand behind President Julius Maada Bio, who has been very supportive of the fight against corruption, but more generally support us who are fighting corruption to be able to take us to the plus or minus 80 in the TI index, and that will bring investment, business opportunities, and maybe Sierra Leone's story will be changed for good.
Maybe. Well, we hope on that, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for coming in on the show as always. And we wish you all the best in your work, in your role, and in your masters.
Thank you very much. Always absolute pleasure to have you interview me.
Thank you.
You are amazing. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is On the Spot. Coming up next are my final words. In my final words, we live in a society where corruption is systemic, endemic, and unfortunately now woven into the fabric of our society. Unfortunately, many acts of corruption are no longer frowned upon as they've now become a common way of life. Now, fighting corruption is the combined effort of everyone as we all, one way or the other, promote this pandemic. We all must take a moment to reflect on the Sierra Leone that we want and understand that we all play a part in its progress, realizing that our public sector is only but a reflection of you and I. The fight against corruption is a Herculean task that cannot be achieved by the Anti-Corruption Commission alone. You have a role to play because corruption robs you and your children of a bright and promising future. Thank you for watching, and please share your thoughts on the discussion on our various social media handles, our website, and via email. Remember that you are only as great as you think and ready to work for. So until next week when we'll be back, keep watching, keep talking, keep it on the spot.